February 15th, 1997, we begin part 2 of tracking the Gilmore in Pittsburgh. On Highway 28 near Ledore, we find ourselves driving cattle down the highway. I think you can see from those wide bodies, it'll be calving time soon. The centerpiece of Ledore was the magnificent G&P Railroad Depot. And all that remains today is the cobbled foundation of the train station. The G&P warehouse, though, appears to still be in pretty good shape. Rolling stock in repose. This old G&P coach served as an adjunct to a motel operation here in Ledore. The round trip on the G&P from Armstead to Salmon took the better part of a day. The G&P usually ran what's called a mixed train. That is, they'd have coaches for passengers, and then they'd have the freight cars attached. Ticket price from Armstead to either Salmon or Gilmore was $6 in 1910 dollars. All aboard! I don't know how the food was along the line, but today, if you like country-style ranch cooking, the hot roast beef sandwich dinner at McRae's is one of the best this side of heaven. Despite appearances, Ledore is today a viable town with nearby successful family unit ranching. This town does have a reason for being. Behind Ledore's old Catholic church lies landmark Gunsight Peak. Evidence indicates that Gunsight Peak was climbed in 1881 by a David R.T. and a J.R. The railroad employed between 35 and 40 people tops, and this is probably where some of them lived. A present employer of the area is the U.S. Forest Service, which operates its Ledore District Ranger Station here. From Ledore to Salmon, the question of following the railroad right-of-way is problematic until one understands that the current Highway 28 road was the old Gilmore and Pittsburgh roadbed. And the annual spring highway washout here can be traced back to the railroad days. Well, so much for Lemhi Valley. And let's head up to Bannock Pass. From the remains of Crook Station in Railroad Canyon, what we'd like to do is pick up the narrative from last week and head up to the top of Bannock Pass, and we'll see if we can ski along the railroad right away and find the tunnel as it burrowed under the Continental Divide. Okay, wallowing along on skis, we're on the railroad grade, heading to the top of the pass and the tunnel entrance in the distance. It's interesting that through its 29 years of existence, the G&P was supported by the Northern Pacific Railroad, yet the G&P was never able to connect with it. And the G&P was never able to make a dime either, so that's why the NP finally dumped it. Can you see how the grade cuts a side hill here? The section crew that built and maintained the rails, the Gandy dancers, sure must have had their work cut out for them here. As we belly up to the tunnel on the Idaho side of the Continental Divide. Well, a relic, and I don't mean the cameraman. These G&P ties are few and far between on this road. Well, railroad ties are an entirely separate subject. The men that made them, called tie hacks, lived an awesomely severe life. They holed up high in the hills and cut the trees down in the winter, sliding them down snowchutes to the rivers. Waiting for the streams to thaw in the springtime, they'd float the logs downstream to the railroads, where they would be hewn into ties. Now imagine backing into this tunnel like the railroad did. What a hellhole. Here at the entrance, those Baldwin locomotives would be maxed out. After having come up this really steep grade here, right at the top. Now, well above the tunnel entrance, we stand astride the frozen waters of the divide of the Atlantic and Pacific. At state milepost marker 529. Idaho, Montana. Today we have a weather disturbance that has slipped right on down the Continental Divide, bringing cloudy skies, obviously, and also much warmer temperatures, almost bordering on a Chinook. So that it's amazing we can have such a world of difference in snow conditions from last weekend to the crud that we're plodding through today. From milepost marker to milepost marker, we can follow the trace of the Continental Divide south to 10,100 foot Horse Prairie Peak, and then off into Montana, the spur of the Beaverhead Range, to Maiden Peak, and along the drainage of Horse Prairie Creek to the 8,500 foot summit that I erroneously called JCB last week. The actual name of the station is Brenner. Still named for the same man, however, John C. Brenner, local rancher. Perhaps here you can see how the General Land Office surveyors dressed their witness posts, cutting them square. And this witness post denotes range 13 west and range 14 west in Montana. Well, we've been finding conditions to be modestly playful, at least enough so that we can tie together a few powder 8s. Well, back to Bannock Pass. Let's head into Montana the easy way. Here's a pretty good view of the tracks coming off Bannock Pass on the Montana side. We are in Beaverhead County, Montana, heading down Horse Prairie. That hay gathering contraption is called a beaverhead slide. And apart from places in western Wyoming, Beaverhead County, Montana is about the only place you'll find a beaverhead slide. You know, hay is kind of scarce this winter. And with potatoes fetching only $1 to $3 a hundredweight, it's been suggested that the Idaho spud could serve as an alternate feed for livestock. Well, now there's T.M. Bannon's triangulation station JCB, elevation 6276. It's snow-free. Let's go climb it. Hiking up through the sagebrush, we should find Bannon's Triangulation Monument just at the top of that rise. It's been my calling to visit about 200 or so of Bannon's triangulation stations in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah. I get goosebumps every time I visit one. In a nutshell, Bannon is a mountaineer's mountaineer. In his career with the U.S. Geological Survey, he climbed perhaps 1,000 mountains in the American West. Bannon was the first to map the Teton. Bannon topographically mapped the Teton Range, first to climb Buck Mountain and several others in the Teton Range. In 1898 and 1899, from 1905 to 1907, he mapped the Fremont Peak and Grovant quads, first noting Fremont Peak to be the highest in Wyoming. And from 1912 to 1915, made perhaps 101st ascents in Idaho and Wyoming. He was the first to climb Idaho's highest mountain, which he called Beauty, and after his death became known as Bora Peak. So it is with reverence that we revisit Bannon's station JCB in Beaverhead County, Montana. As we do the last few feet to the top, I'll read Bannon's notes from his field book from 1913. JCB, on a sharp, prominent, low peak in the Horse Prairie Valley, 1/4 mile east of Gilmore and Pittsburgh Railroad track, 1 mile east of Brenner Station, and a ½ mile east of J.C. Brenner's Ranch. Station mark is a triangulation tablet under a large monument, which you see, Bannon was noted for his large rocky monuments a signature of his. Reference mark, a chiseled cross on solid rock, 7.5 feet northwest. From JCB, with his theodolite, Bannon shot angles to east and west peak, Bloody Dick Peak at 166 degrees azimuth, and Pass Peak at 354 degrees azimuth, way back in Idaho. These angles taken, of course, would be what permitted Bannon to construct the skeleton of his topographical maps. Starting from a known baseline, triangulation or measurement of angles is expanded outward. Typically the maps of the day were of a 30-minute series of latitude and longitude. It's quite amazing that in mid-February the hiking is better than the skiing in Montana. But that's the situation that we've encountered today. Great day for a hike. Well, let's head back down to Horse Prairie and continue our travels. Brenner Station, the railroad station, was nothing elaborate, just an old boxcar used for the station, but the Brenner Ranch, which burned down in 1913, has been rebuilt to something of elegance. You know, Lewis and Clark were mighty lucky hombres. Coming up the Missouri as far as they could with a boat, they cached it. Coming up Horse Prairie, they were on foot. Having many miles to go, they would have perished without horses. And what luck to have Sacagawea along, a Shoshone, who met our kinfolks. And thank goodness for those blue beads which Lewis and Clark were able to barter for horses and continue on their way to the Pacific coast in 1805. Continuing down Horse Prairie, our companion, the G&P right-of-way. The town of Grant was a G&P station. Not too far from Bannack, Montana's first capital city. But Grant's real claim to fame is its geographical location. With its proximity to Jeff Davis Peak. Get it? What was Armstead, Montana, ceased to exist in 1961 when the Clark Canyon Reservoir was filled. Fortunately, the Oregon Short Line Railroad depot was salvaged and resides on a nearby ranch in Horse Prairie. And ditto for this freight building. Armstead had two railroad depots, but unfortunately the G&P one no longer exists. As the roadbed disappears into the waters of Clark Canyon Reservoir, we'll bid the Gilmore and Pittsburgh farewell. Despite today's balmy weather, Clark Canyon Reservoir is a favorite spot to ice fish. from one of the best spots to eat in southwestern Montana. This is Rick Bogger paying tribute to America's largest employer at the start of the 20th century.